if I'd been in that room with you in Woolies, I wouldn't have been surprised at all that you got the order.
I think I wanted to understand how the whole business world worked. Instantly, I went from having no experience in this world to having 5 SKUs in Woolworths and 5 SKUs in Coles of this product that I'd built in 4 months.
The packaging is so distinctive. The person actually is almost secondary to the packaging.
Absolutely. No matter what happens, people have always got to eat.
There's actually a sense of theatre with this as well. It's not just the jar that's on the corner of the bench.
Exactly.
That actually becomes something which is a statement in its own right of how you live nowadays.
Yep. The first brand that I launched after I left L'Oreal, and I really just threw myself in the deep end, staying true to that, and everything we do is eclectic.
Brand is super powerful, as we know. Welcome again to Brandr. I'm Roy Tavenor, co-host of the podcast, and my colleague is Richard Henderson, brand guru, brand thinker, and generally nice guy. And today, really interesting session because we're turning our focus on to young entrepreneurs. And we have with us today Alli Bailey, who is, I couldn't imagine a better example of somebody like that. At her age, she's already done 4 different products, 4 different brands, and we're going to be talking about them and showing you her latest one. Welcome to Brandr.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is very exciting.
It's only a pleasure. I think, as we've spoken about before, Alli, this is all about lifting the lid. The audience, we think, want to know how branding people are successful. Mm-hmm. What are the secrets? Let's call it the backstory. So we'd love to hear yours. We know a little bit about your background, but perhaps you could introduce yourself. How did you get into this caper? What do you do? And particularly, how would you tell other people who want to do the same?
Amazing. I'll jump right into it. So I grew up in a very entrepreneurial household. My dad was still is a serial entrepreneur, has always been creating brands. So for as long as I can really remember, there was new products coming through the door and there was always branding talk, and that was always just a part of my childhood, which I thought was completely normal. Going to supermarkets and spending hours walking through the aisles, taking photos, I just thought that was a completely normal part of childhood. So it did get to a point where we were a bit older and we were like, Dad, do we really have to keep walking through supermarkets? We're on holiday. But I get it now, which makes a lot of sense. I think the journey for me, I always knew I wanted to run my own business. That was always something that I'd thought or I'd seen in my future. And I think a lot of that is because my parents always ran their own business. But it was not the easiest journey. I probably didn't understand how you get to that point or what the stepping stones were. I went to boarding school, I finished school and decided to go to uni, finished uni and thought, okay, now I get a job. And I was always very ambitious. I wanted to work for someone great and I wanted to do really cool things when I was young. But I think the thought of starting my own business when I was that young, it wasn't really in my mind. I didn't think I had the tools. I didn't think I knew anything yet. I did a marketing degree where, I didn't really learn a whole lot. It was 3 years of kind of nothing. So I went and got a corporate job at L'Oreal, which I thought was huge and exciting and was going to be the start of this massive corporate career for me. And I kind of lost that idea of what having my own business or where that sort of was going to play a role in my life. And then I lasted about 3 months at L'Oreal before I realized, okay, this is not for me. I think I quickly understood that everything that I'd grown up seeing was what I'd thought business was everywhere. And then I got to L'Oreal and I realized, this is, there's a lot of processes, there's a lot of people, and I was a no one, I was a junior. So my opinion didn't really mean anything. I couldn't really talk to the senior people in my team. It was all very conservative. And I thought, that's not what I want to do. I want to be ambitious. And I remember there was this one day where we had a meeting and there was this product that they were going to launch that was coming from Europe. And I thought, wow, if we can launch this product in the next 6 months, it's going to be huge. Like, this is going to fly off the shelf. And they're like, yeah, so it'll be here in about 3 years. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like I could go and create this product in 6 months. So I think that was the turning point for me. I learned a lot. I learned how to work with retailers, and I learned how, that whole marketing scene works. But I think that for me was like, okay, if I can do things quickly, then that is the advantage that we have over the big guys.
That's a wake-up call. So
Exactly.
What were you hoping to learn when you decided to go to L'Oreal in the first place? What were you hoping to learn?
Well, the journey was I actually wanted to go and work in New York. So I actually wanted to go.
Okay.
I love change. I love pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. So I actually finished school and finished uni and decided I want to go to New York to work at a big corporate. And I went over there. I got a job at a big advertising agency, and then COVID hit. And so mum and dad were like, come home. You're not staying over there. So I came home, and I still was craving that, corporate experience. So that's why I went to L'Oreal. And I think I wanted to sort of just understand how the whole business world worked. I'd only ever seen it from one point of view, which was my family business. And so I think my idea of what these big corporations looked like was that they were just a more glamorous version of what my parents did. So I thought that sounds like so much fun. Not so many late nights and stressful phone calls and all that kind of stuff. I thought this would be a great place to learn the ropes and maybe even stay there for, 10 years and climb the ladder. And maybe that was going to be subconsciously, I think I knew that was never going to be my journey. But at the time I thought maybe that's something that I'll do for a good portion of my life.
So that's one good thing that came out of COVID.
Absolutely.
I think on
Changed
that, though,
your career direction.
Yes, it did.
I think on that, though, Alli, the way you express that seems very calm and logical and full of enthusiasm. But in reality, for someone like you, come from that background with the values that you've been brought up with, to actually change that mindset would have been quite confronting, because you're actually going to move into a dynamic which is uncertain, and maybe a certain disappointment of, well, that's where you thought you would go. I think we've all had that in our lives. But where you actually are going to go through your own intuition. I mean, there's an old phrase that says, no one can stop an idea whose time has come. And I think that would be relevant for you, that you just arrive one day and say, hey, I'm out of here.
Yeah. And I think I did almost need to throw myself in the deep end. I think, and it happens to a lot of people, you can get comfortable with those big companies and kind of just slowly climb the corporate ladder and do what you need to do and clock off at 5 o'clock and, go home and forget about work. And I think for me, when I decided that wasn't for me and I wasn't fulfilled by leaving the office at 5 o'clock and getting there at 9, like that wasn't fulfilling for me. I think there was then a secondary part where I had to actually throw myself in the deep end and have nothing else lined up and just quit my job and go, okay, now I've got to figure something out. And that was sort of how the entrepreneurial journey began.
But there are so many stories in life of other entrepreneurs who've done exactly the same thing. They've got no idea where the future lies except for self-belief, and that the universe, will look after the whole process because you're already willing yourself into something new.
Absolutely.
I think I've just learned one thing out of the last couple of minutes, that you were sort of thinking of going into a 9 to 5 job, but actually what you love is a 5 to 9 job.
True. Very true.
True?
Yeah.
And that's not what most people go to
That's a
uni
very
for.
good line, Roy.
I think I'll grab that one, actually. Now, L'Oreal, cosmetics, skincare, and so forth. When you came back to Australia, now you've done 4 brands, Daily Ritual, Stacked, Alive, and now we're looking at Bella Cucina. Suddenly, it's food. How come the switch?
I did originally after L'Oreal, I did kind of think, look, I've seen a lot of potential innovation that's coming in the next 5 years. What if I could replicate that really quickly? And what if I could do something in that space? I obviously saw how successful their brands were. I also saw how much money they spent in marketing to enable the brands to be super successful. And I also think I was not as inspired by the personal care industry, the beauty industry, as I was with food. And the one thing that my dad had always said since we were young was that no matter what happens, and this kind of really amplified during COVID, but no matter what happens, people have always got to eat. And I think it's something that's always sort of stuck with me. And although in COVID people did start to splurge on, beauty items and things like that, I really saw the longevity in the food space for me. I'm also a massive foodie, which helps. But I saw more creativity and innovation in the food space than I ever really did in the beauty space. And maybe that's just because I was more passionate about food than I ever was beauty.
So can you just start off with just a quick sort of summary of each of those brands, and then obviously the one we're going to talk about most today, spend a bit more time on that. But start off with Daily Ritual. What was that all about?
Yeah, Daily Ritual was an interesting one. It was the first brand that I launched after I left L'Oreal. And I really just threw myself in the deep end. I had no idea really how supermarkets worked. I didn't really know anything about superfoods, and it was a superfoods brand. But I ended up going to see a buyer at Woolworths. I think I found him on LinkedIn, sent him a note. He was a great guy. And he said, yeah, I'm happy to catch up, which I now know is actually quite rare because it is hard sometimes to get onto these buyers. And I sat down with him and I said, oh, what are you sort of looking for in your category? And he said, oh, I'm actually looking for someone who can bring me some superfood blends. And I was like, oh, no way. Funny you say that. I've been working on these superfood blends. He was like, oh, can you have them ready in 6 months' time? I was like, yeah, absolutely. So I remember I left the meeting. I called my dad and I was like, I think I just got a brand into Woolworths.
Isn't that, though, amazing where, something like that, the first break is all you need to fuel that enthusiasm,
Absolutely.
to deliver on your idea and your self-belief. That one contact. Now, you were very lucky you got that one contact as you did.
That's 1 in 100.
Exactly.
I know, but that doesn't deny the point that you have to look for that opportunity. It doesn't just come to you. You've got to go out and seek and find that. And they were a very lucky break for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's amazing now how many brands, and really what we do now is we build brands based off what the retailers want. We go and we look for innovation all over the world, but the idea of creating a brand, trying to build the brand and then trying to sell it into the retailers is a lot harder than working with a retailer to bring them what they need.
Yes.
And having that.
So they have a gap. Yeah.
Exactly. And it also makes the process more enjoyable because you get to work with them to create, which is what we did with Bella Cucina, to create a brand that, the retailer is also passionate about. So that creates a bit
So
more
with that
fun.
conversation with Woolies, was your intention also to put it into other supermarkets like Coles, etc., or was it going to be exclusive to them?
No, initially I thought this is a once-off and it's probably just going to go into Woolworths. I remember then trying to, do renders on my laptop myself and try and find someone who could make superfood powders. We got there, and then I think once I had the product in my hand and had product sitting in the warehouse, I was like, okay, well, we may as well try and get it into Coles. Like, that's, the next step, right?
Yeah.
So then I had another great meeting with the Coles buyer at the time, and he was like, yeah, absolutely, I'd love to take it. So instantly I went from having no experience in this world to having 5 SKUs in Woolworths and 5 SKUs in Coles of this product that I'd built in 4 months.
So what do you think about that? Do you think that's because they intuitively saw, the retailer saw a gap in the market and then a market in the gap? Is that how you were to see that? So you sort of arrived, their mindset was, as you said before, was already in that space. They could see on the shelf an opportunity. You arrived, they helped you manifest the opportunity. But then, of course, you had to deliver on the promise because those guys, I imagine they're sort of pretty hard-asked,
Yeah, that was definitely the second sort of half of the journey. But I think, we had a product and we had a brand once I'd spoken to this Woolworths buyer that really did fill a gap. So the sell to Coles was easier because it was filling a gap in the supermarket. We had a full story around how we were trading consumers up because the product that they were currently buying online for triple the price, they couldn't even get it in the supermarket. So we were selling this story around it. The supermarket should be a one-stop shop, but people are still doing a portion of their shopping, especially for superfoods, at the chemist or online. So we wanted to bring that into the supermarket. So the story was really there, and I think that definitely helped.
I think also looking at the packaging that you've done there, the package is also the brand. So for the supermarket or the big retailer, you're providing an uplift for their own brand, the master brand being the retailer, through the innovation and the look that you're providing. So you're just not another bottle or package on the shelf, to choose price point.
Yep.
You're actually something through your branding that actually is desire. So it's a pick me type of starting point. And I think that helps the retailer because they're looking fresh, innovative, and almost international and global.
I think also the point you made about what you learned at L'Oreal is very much a problem for the Woolies buyer, because he knows instantly if he's having a meeting with one of the big multinationals, he's going to get the bureaucratic.
Yep.
Give us 3 years. Yeah, we'll go and do some consumer research, whatever. He that's a problem for him.
Yep.
You walked in and said, "Look, hey, I can do it for you." And so, what's not to like about you? So tell us about.
Just got to find a way to do it.
Exactly. So Stacked was the next one.
Yeah, Stacked and Alive were pretty simultaneous, and that was because of the technology that we used in both of the beverages. So Stacked was a milk-based beverage, and we used encapsulated caffeine. So essentially we looked at the trends of people that were buying chocolate milk and Red Bull and thought, gosh, so there was a huge duplication around people that were buying a chocolate milk were also buying a Red Bull. And we thought, imagine if we mixed the two together and we made a chocolate milk that had the same amount of energy as a Red Bull or more.
So this is energy milk.
Energy milk. So, and usually with caffeine or guarana, you get that funky taste. With this encapsulated technology, it meant we could put it in anything and it didn't impact the viscosity or the taste. So we kind of opened this whole great world of let's start putting caffeine and probiotics in everything. If it's not going to affect the taste, then this is a win-win. So that's where we went with Stacked. Caffeinated chocolate milk. We also had a coffee variant. And that was just that was a fun one, but it was also a really quick one. And because we were doing it at the same time as we were building Alive, it probably didn't get the love that it deserved because the love went all into Alive, which was, or is, our symbiotic beverage. So we use a mix of pre and probiotics to create the ultimate gut health beverage.
But that's such a success story that you've moved that on, haven't you?
Yeah, so we've now partnered with SPC to really drive the future of Alive and build out the brand, which is really exciting.
So I have a question about the marketing funding of it, let's say, because it's a great scenario you've painted. A retailer says, I love what Alli's offering me. There's a gap in my range. How do you back it in with marketing? Who spends the dollars? Did it have to be your money? Did the retailer back you in with the marketing? Because, as you said before we had the podcast, that selling it in was easy. Mm-hmm. Making sure it walked off the shelves, not so easy.
Part, yeah.
So what have you learned there?
I think, I instantly learned from Daily Ritual that, I thought at the time, easy to get something into a supermarket. Like, wow, if it's this easy, I'm going to just keep going through all these different categories. I quickly learned not that easy. But I thought, once it's on the shelf and the retailers give you their expected run rates, that's just sort of how much you're going to move. And then you build out this whole forecast and this whole cash flow and you go, wow, I'm going to be making so much money. And then you quickly realize that it doesn't just move because it's on the shelf. You've really got to work twice as hard to get it off the shelf, to get consumers picking it up, purchasing, and then coming back to repurchase.
Which was your job, right? To go the next day, to bring it to the public's face, to actually create desire, and then they will find it in the supermarket. Is that the process there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and in terms of answering your question with who spends the money, the retailers will support you in, helping fund promotions and things like that. But really you've got to be willing to either spend the money or find different ways to market your product. So we, with Alive and with Bella Cucina, we don't want to be a brand that just pumps all this money into marketing. A lot of the time it's fluff. It's just marketing fluff and you're spending money and you can't really see the return because you're not an e-com brand. We prefer to do stuff that's guerrilla style, that makes people look twice. There's definitely a place for doing things like using meta ads to get your messaging across. But I think, and we've always really spent a lot of time on our branding and our packaging because we almost want that to be a lot of our marketing. We want people to, we know that in food, you need to be influencing people's purchase right before or at the time of purchase. So they might see the brand on Instagram 3 days prior. That doesn't mean they're going to remember it when they go into the supermarket. If we can influence them at the point of purchase, that's where we need to influence them.
I've noticed on your socials, say TikTok, for example, the packaging is so distinctive. The person actually is almost secondary to the packaging.
Absolutely.
Quite often the host is a vampire, takes over from the actual product, but your product, so well designed, so distinctive, and such a unique colour. They always say blue is not a really great food colour, but you've taken that into a completely different dimension. That then is something that you recognise in the memory, and then when you see it, cruising in the supermarket shelves, there's the connection.
Yep.
I think that's a very good sort of philosophy or a strategy that you've employed, which places so much emphasis on the design of the package.
So how many years have you actually been in business now?
About 4 years.
A veteran,
Yeah.
Veteran, okay.
Some might say.
So 4 years, 4 products.
Yeah.
Let's talk about product number 4. You've got some samples here.
Yes.
Tell us about it, how you came up with the idea, how you've actually taken it through the steps, and obviously you've learnt a whole lot of things in the first 4 years. Tell us about this brand.
Yeah, Bella Cucina is a really exciting one. So we only launched it about 3 months ago. So it's very new, but already I think will be our most successful brand. The first 3 months have been amazing. And again, it was built really, really quickly, which I think is how we are able to have success, is because we're able to move quickly. If we took too long to do things, your competitors have already come in and taken that space from you. But this was built off a similar conversation with Woolworths and saying, look, we want to spice up the pasta sauce category. It's boring, it's stale, there's been nothing fun or innovative done in the space for so long.
Heavy jars with lids that are very difficult to get off, etc.
Exactly. It's a sea of red. We thought, how do we do something really different? I'm a massive foodie. I eat a lot of pasta. And we have such an amazing hospitality scene in Australia, and none of it translates through to the supermarket. So you go to these amazing Italian restaurants. They have cool, funky branding. The menus look great. The socials are great. And then you go to the supermarket and you've got the choice of the same things you've had for the last 20 years. And
everybody else has got it. Yeah.
Exactly. And I took a lot of inspiration from what was happening overseas, and they were innovating in their sauce flavors and what they were seeing in restaurants. You could then buy, still in a jar, but you could then buy it in the supermarket, whereas we have just always had the same variants. And although we continue to innovate in the restaurant side of things, it never ever translates. And so I saw a huge opportunity to do something really, really fun and exciting.
Plus, inside the home, when someone's obviously home cooking this, there's actually a sense of theatre with this as well. It's not just the jar that's on the corner of the bench.
Exactly.
That actually becomes something which is a statement in its own right of how you live nowadays.
Yeah.
And seeing how you can mix this with so many different parts, as I've looked at on the social media, it's quite extraordinary.
For our YouTube viewers, maybe you could just do a bit of a show and tell, highlight some of the things about the brand, the colour of the packaging, even the style of the packaging, because the pouch format is very different than the traditional. Just walk us through visually to camera and maybe just highlight, if you're saying, look, this is a case study. This is how you should do packaging. Just take us through the design.
So the Alli Vodka, which is our best-selling variant, it really started with having these two colours, the blue and the pink. We kind of played around with a lot of different colours to begin with. And we were always, because they're red sauces, they're tomato-based sauces, we always got dragged back to red and orange. And we thought we cannot be in this sea of red with another red or orange pouch. So we thought, all right, we're just going to go completely different and we're going to go blue. So initially we did the blue pouch and we always played with the checked colours. We landed on pink because I think we just felt like this was fun. This can be translated into merch. This can be translated into bags and cool, I don't know, blow up toys and all that kind of stuff. Like, these are colours that people will wear. Yeah. These are colours that people will put on other things. So we wanted it to be a brand that was fun, and we didn't just limit ourselves to being pasta
and
sauce.
fresh.
And fresh and exciting. And just something completely different. We then played around a lot with having some sort of mascot or something to sort of build the personality of the brand. And this little tomato we thought was just like the cutest thing ever. And we thought it gives a bit of personality. We can then pull this into being our brand mascot, and we can have Bella the tomato be a personality for our brand. The fonts were really important to us. We looked at restaurant menus and places where we loved the fonts that they were using and the Italian style type, and we looked at all of that, and we wanted to make sure we used bold, strong, but Italian styled fonts. And then the colours for us, we obviously then chose our SKU colours just based on the ingredients inside each pouch. And yeah, it's been really fun. I think this is one of the most exciting parts about the brand is how it looks. And we built it this way so that people would pick it up just because of how it looked. They would then eat it and they would repurchase because it was delicious.
Within what you were talking about there, Ali, there's a number of layering of stories. So the pack represents them all complete, but you can take parts of that pack and then they can have their own life.
Absolutely.
So there's really there's almost a tribal sort of connection here, and then the enthusiasm, of course, that you have, and the friendliness, because you've got handwritten type there as well.
Yep.
So there's a whole lot of different dynamics going here, which are very carefully considered, but from the observer's point of view or the purchaser's point of view, it just looks complete.
One of the things I like about your design is that you haven't been traditional in terms of, like, every pouch has got to have a window. Why does yours not have a window?
Yeah, we definitely thought about it. We thought about a window. We thought about having a visual. And I think we just landed on the fact that we wanted to create a sea of blue, and we wanted to have as much shelf impact as we could, because, you know, that's all you get from a branding perspective in the supermarket is your shelf space. And if we could create this sea of blue among a sea of red, that was what was going to be most powerful for the brand. And we made the bottom window see-through. So we thought if people really are unsure what's inside, they can pick it up and they can still have a look. But I think we didn't want to lose so much of our pouch space to just a nothing window that people don't get any information. It doesn't mean anything to anyone. Yeah. So we thought, let's fill the pouch with as much impactful and as much exciting copy and call outs as we can, so people can gain the most, I guess, understanding of what the brand is from reading the front.
I'd like also to just call out your company name, because how you went about this job is quite eclectic, to use your company name. Just tell us how you designed it, because this wasn't done again with some agency down in Collingwood. You're in Melbourne.
Yes.
Your mind, I don't know where your mind is really, but it's all over
Everywhere.
all over the world. How did you do this job? Who helped you with it, and from which countries?
A lot of what we do is travel and look at what's happening overseas. We go to Asia frequently, the US, the UK. We want to see all the innovation and be able to take different parts of what we see around the world to create something super meaningful here in Australia. So the brand name Eclectic was completely natural to us, because nothing we do is normal or straightforward. Everything we do is eclectic. We bring things from different countries, from different, you know, backgrounds, from different what's the word I'm looking for? Different walks of life, I guess. You know,
different influences.
Yeah, we look at, you know, clothing brands, we look at different food products, we look at restaurants, we look at sporting clubs, we look at everything to try and get inspiration. And then I think the brand name Eclectic has this second meaning of like, okay, our name is now Eclectic because what we do, we pull things from lots of different sources. But now we need to make sure we stay true to that, and everything we do is eclectic. So we don't want to do things the same way other people do it, whether that's marketing, whether that's brand presentations, whatever it is. We want to make sure that, again, it's different, it's eclectic, it's fun, and it's fresh.
So your designer was in Brazil.
So yeah, we basically with this, I kind of played around. I like to do a lot of the design, you know, the initial scoping myself, and we do a lot of that in-house because we know how we want things to look. Then we need someone who's got that creative eye to be able to draw things and basically put it all together. So we knew we wanted the checks, we knew we wanted strong font, we knew we wanted some sort of mascot. And then we have a designer in Brazil who then draws the beautiful mascot, puts everything together, gets all the fonts spot on. And then locally we have another team as well who puts everything together, makes it, you know, pack ready, print ready. So yeah, we love to use different influences from all around the world.
I think there's also, that's part of this whole process of shortening time too, isn't it,
Absolutely.
Alli? So that you don't have this length, you don't get caught up in an agency system. You're on it. You have the self-belief, you have the motivation, and you also know exactly in your mind how it should be, because that's what makes the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to summarise what I think I've learned. It's in three parts. I think that firstly, this brand is super powerful, as we know. So I think your narrative this morning tells me three things. One is the importance of the product brand itself, creating the magic, because it's just a sauce at the end. Other people have sauce, pasta sauce, but you've brought it to life in terms of brand. The second layer is your company brand, Eclectic. You're not sort of, you know, a PTY Limited, some big global corporate who, you know, just a generic name. And I think I'd also highlight your personal brand, because your personality comes through strongly in the way you present. And I think one of the reasons, if I'd been in that room with you in Woolies, I wouldn't have been surprised at all that you got the order, because some people just don't live and breathe the brand. So again, I compliment you on that. We're winding up in the next minute or so. And Richard, I'm just pondering here, because your traditional closing question is irrelevant.
well, I don't know. 4 years in time scale is a lifetime, really. So in terms of brand,
so pose the question.
Okay. Alli, thank you very much for that, Roy. Alli, you know what we always ask is, you know, what would you today, 4 years on from where you started, what would you whisper in your ear of your younger self when you had that, you know, epiphany to leave L'Oreal, which we discussed wouldn't have been easy because you were going on a journey of the unknown to the unknown, almost the hero's journey out there. What would you say to that young person who was thinking about that at the time to where you are today?
I would tell my youngest self, like my 16-year-old self, to just start a business and just do something. I think especially in the schooling system, you just grow up in this space where you think you have to have this perfect trajectory. And I always believed that. I thought I had to finish school, I had to go to uni, I had to get a job. And I think I'd tell my youngest self, like, just...
Screw that.
Yeah, screw that. I even said to my younger sister, like, don't worry about uni, just start a business. The quicker you start, the quicker we're going to have failures. Things are going to go wrong. That's always the way that it works.
I'm loving what you're talking about, because we have the belief that once you get in the system, you're just on the hamster wheel. Exactly. It's all planned out for the education system, the political system. It's everything organised to actually keep you in the lane. Yep. That's your lane. Yep. Whereas if you get rid of the idea of the lanes to start off with, you've suddenly got the whole world. And so many young people at 16 are running businesses.
Exactly.
You know, there are millionaires out there that are you know, hugely successful from some ideas. So that's the world we live in, and I think you're a great example of taking the risk. It's fantastic.
Well, congratulations, Alli. It's
Thank
been
you.
very refreshing to hear your story, and we really loved having you on Brandr today. I think your message will go out to hopefully other people like you, or hopefully 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Okay, so where do we find, how can the customer get this product?
Yes, Bella Cucina is currently available at all Woolworths stores, which is extremely exciting, and 300 independents as well. So if you go to Woolies, you'll be able to find it for sure. But yeah, thank you guys so much. It's been a great chat, and I've learned a lot too, so I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, guys. You've been on Brandr.